Welcome, friends. This is Chrissy, the host of the Just Chrissy podcast, and I have a very special guest with me today, Katherine Gordon. We not only are friends, but we are also sister integrative health practitioners. In addition to that, she also has her health coach certification, and she is the wellness director for the Chambers Apothecary in Chambersburg. And so you have a full list of like titles also.
Yeah.
Um,
They're
so
getting more.
yeah, you're like collecting gems along the way.
Yes.
Um, I asked Catherine here today to talk about a condition that people would recognize as POTS. And I don't know, is it something people are aware of? I feel like as I was trying to read up on it that um like some people have it and don't even realize that that's what it is.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I can't tell you how many times people come to me and be like, "Oh, I just don't feel that great." And then they kind of tell me their symptoms and I'm like, "Huh, that really sounds like it could be POTS." When I was a teenager, kind of navigating this, nobody seemed to know what it was, including doctors. So I think that that's kind of gotten a lot better through the years, like more recently. But if you bring up to just like a random person that you meet somehow that, oh, I have POTS, usually you get the answer, oh, I know somebody who has that, or I heard of somebody who has that. So
So so first of all, let's state that neither Catherine or I are medical doctors, and so we cannot diagnose, treat, or cure anything. We are just sharing wisdom from your life experience living with POTS,
yeah.
and some natural holistic thoughts about it. Would you say that medical doctors are familiar with it, or do you feel like the holistic world has grown, and so in that sense, it's gotten more awareness?
Yeah, I think both to a point. Like I said, back when I was a teenager, this is like the early 2010s and such, like the doctors didn't really seem to know what it was unless you like specifically went to a cardiologist, I feel like. But now I think the holistic world is getting more into it. Unfortunately, I went the medical route first, so I don't know how they were at that in that time period. But a lot of people I talk to in the holistic world, they automatically know what it is, because they know somebody who basically has it due to a problem that they're trying to treat more holistically. So, especially like at Well with Ray, we see a lot of like POTS patients because of Lyme, especially. So,
Oh yeah, because of viral triggers.
yeah.
So is it common? Like when tell me like what are some of the symptoms? Like when do you see this cropping up? Is it male and females? Is it usually in a certain age range?
Yeah, so both males and females can have it. It's more popular in women, especially girls who are like just starting or have already started a couple years prior puberty. For some reason, we don't exactly know why. Sometimes like the hormonal changes can kind of trigger that. Usually in girls who kind of get it during puberty, they're some of the luckier group that tends to grow out of it, which some doctors will tell you if you get a POTS diagnosis as a teenager, oh, it's all right, you're going to grow out of it, which isn't always the case. It really depends on kind of why you developed POTS. But that is still kind of a medical mystery as to why there's a very high number of girls who are developing this during puberty and then growing out of it, which is really interesting.
So from a holistic standpoint, do you feel like that because of our environmental factors, like our meat being injected with antibiotics, our animals being fed a lot of grain, which has corn, so we have the glyphosate issue. Environmental, as far as perfumes and the 17,000 chemicals they don't have to disclose, but the 80,000 environmental chemicals that are out there um, in the United States, which is mind blowing compared to the European Union, which is that still like 1,100? Like they only allow like 1,100 and we've got 80,000. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a large number.
So it's something to, don't quote me, but it's something to that effect. So do you feel like that is what, like, so this is an interesting question. I don't know if you have the answer or not. Is POTS in the United States seem to be more aggressive than other countries? Because,
That's interesting. All the groups and stuff that I'm in, they're all US based. So I haven't really talked to anybody abroad with POTS, to be honest.
I'm going to write that down and just see if there's any
Yeah.
studies to be done.
Yes, that would be a great topic. I'm gonna have to look that up later actually because now I'm intrigued. Um, I would say environmental factors do play a little bit of a role, and obviously nobody clinically admits it, I feel like at this point. There's no like literature on it to my knowledge. If there is, I would love for somebody to point it out to me. But I think environmental factors can play a role. Some people are more sensitive to glyphosate and stuff, which can, upset the nervous system, which can
Mhm.
use. I know that for me and a lot of the, POTS patients I see as health coaching clients, they benefit a lot from like cutting chemicals, especially in food. It makes a big difference, and it personally made a big difference for me.
I was going to say, you're one of them that did not grow out of it, and you
Yeah,
started your health journey, your health coaching journey, your integrative health practitioner journey, because you were looking for answers for yourself. And I
yeah,
think a lot of us start that way.
yeah, for sure.
So, what about the dyes? Do you think I mean, obviously chemicals also, but
It's hard to say since they don't really like to do many studies on them. Um,
yeah.
I'm personally allergic to red dye 40. Um, so like I think that maybe say you would have like a really severe allergic reaction to something and then develop POTS. I've heard of that being a trigger for it. Um, there's lots of different ways, like I said, that we can kind of develop POTS. Back to the environmental thing, one thing that I will say that's really interesting, and this is just my personal experience. So where I live, where I grew up, I mean, there's field behind our house and there was a field in front of our house, and now it's houses in front, but it used to be a field. And I know they spray things because I watch them do it. Not sure exactly what it is. But my neighbor, who was my cousin, developed POTS. I have POTS. My other neighbor, who was a really great friend of mine, she developed cyclic vomiting syndrome, and which is kind of linked to like nervous system as well. So there's quite a few people on my road where I grew up that have developed some kind of a nervous system issue, and most of us also have well water, so that's very intriguing. So whatever they were spraying would definitely
Oh,
probably
yeah.
make its way into our water supply.
Wow. So very much, yeah, supportive of making sure you have a filter, clean water. And I know even here where we live, it used to be all orchards. And of course, every 2 weeks they were spraying. And I used to let my windows open. And when they would spray, I would have to close the windows because it made me so sick.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't realize the damage we're doing. So what does POTS stand for?
So it stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and it is a disorder of the autonomic nervous system. So it falls under the umbrella of dysautonomia. A lot of people think it's a heart condition. It's not, even though it can affect your heart.
Talk about the automatics, the nervous system.
Yes, so our
Yes.
autonomic nervous system, basically it does all of your bodily functions that like you don't consciously think about.
Like
So
breathing, your
yeah,
heart.
yes, your heart rate, your breathing, your blood pressure, your temperature, even digestion and stuff like that.
Okay. So then it says it looks really, from the research I've done, it looks really similar to other health conditions, even like mast cell activation,
Yes.
chronic fatigue. Um, and then also people with POTS, do they have like other coexisting issues going on normally, or is that
Yes, usually it kind of comes in waves of different things. Most people that have POTS do have something else, at least one other thing going on, whether that be like allergies, mast cell. There's kind of the trio, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a genetic disorder, mast cell, and then POTS. I was lucky enough to get that trio there. And then also a lot of people have other things as well, like fibromyalgia tied into that, IBS. Generally, it comes with a kind of a slew of other issues that I think sometimes we categorize as like say IBS, but really it's technically like a POTS symptom considering your nervous system is kind of firing when it's not supposed to be.
so when you say did you say IBS? Like
Yes.
irritable bowel?
Yes.
So people, okay, Tell me what that looks like in more depth. Like for someone who because I do have some clients that bathroom is an issue.
Yeah. So it can look like there's IBS-C and IBS-D, so it can be either severe diarrhea or constipation. There's also like bloating, really severe acid reflux, that kind of stuff. Basically, like certain foods send you to the bathroom immediately, which can also be kind of an overlap of mast cell too. So with people with POTS, it's really interesting, even if they don't necessarily have mast cell. Food triggers are big, like big. If you know your food triggers and you can avoid them, your quality of life can get like 30 to 50% better, I would say.
So are the food triggers kind of common or it can be different for different people?
They're different for different people, I would say. Is a lot of people, like I said, do have the mast cell, which plays a role. And there's certain foods that are higher in histamine. Like if you look up a low histamine diet, it'll kind of explain what foods are higher in it. Um, but there's just some random foods too that certain people react to that there's no real rhyme or reason for. And then other people you can tell, okay, like this definitely is like a histamine thing, like a histamine sensitivity.
So yeah, people with mast cell and or POTS would have a histamine sensitivity then.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay. So I don't think we went over this yet. What are symptoms of POTS?
So there's a whole bunch. Basically, anything that can go wrong in your nervous system could potentially be a symptom, but the main ones are low blood pressure, some faint or near fainting. You don't have to faint to be categorized as having POTS. Tachycardia or fast heart rate, stomach issues, flushing, blood pooling, skin mottling, obviously shaking, fatigue, heart palpitations, digestive issues. Trying to think if I miss any of the really main ones.
What is skin modeling?
So, skin modeling is kind of if you've ever looked at somebody and you can kind of see their skin turning like purple, maybe with like white dots, and you're like, oh, you have poor circulation. Does that make sense?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
really what skin modeling is. I feel like it's hard to explain hearing it on a podcast rather than seeing a picture. So I'm trying to like paint that picture for me.
right. So it's a discoloration in the skin.
Yeah, yeah, and it does go away with like better circulation, different temperature, even massage. Sometimes you can kind of massage the blood almost back to where your skin isn't modeled. Yeah.
And then the tachycardia, is that something that's ongoing all the time or it just comes and goes?
For me, it
What,
comes and goes.
and
For
what does that look like for someone that doesn't know what tachycardia is?
So yeah, so tachycardia is just a fast heart rate. So if you feel like your heart's beating really fast, it's kind of pounding out of your chest, maybe palpitating a little bit. That's what tachycardia is. Usually you get out of breath, you get a little bit shaky. Um, I personally have it come and go because I know my triggers. But some people don't, so they would have it all the time, or they are just in a spot, say, where they are so incredibly ill with, for example, like Lyme disease or mold illness that, like, or some other viral infection, that they would have it all the time. There's sometimes people who develop POTS to the point where they can't really get out of bed. They have it so severe they have trouble sitting up without passing out. And like for those type of people, I could imagine that they probably experience it all the time because that's also where deconditioning to a point plays a role. If we lay around too much, it's bad for us, but then we get too tired and we can't keep going all the time either. So it's a fine line, a fine balance of everything you do in your life to try and manage this.
So would someone with POTS like does it I'm just thinking of someone in particular. Like I have a client that right now is having a hard time waking up in the morning, like that just has a hard time in the morning. Like they wake up, but they're completely zapped. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then as the morning goes on, they start to kind of recover, but there's like anxiety and anxiousness
Yeah.
when they wake up. The heart rate
Yes.
is an issue, so that might be something they want to just check out.
Yes, for sure. So I tell all people with POTS, I have people come to me and like I said, like we said before, like we're not doctors, so we can't diagnose, but I do have people come to me and they're like, I scheduled an appointment with you because like I think I have POTS. and I'm hoping you can like point me in the right direction. And I always tell them, first and foremost, let's check the main stuff. Have you had a recent vaccine? Have you had a recent illness, like such as like Epstein-Barr virus, mono, like strep, like anything, even the flu? Have you been exposed to some kind of chemical? Have you had a tick bite? Do you think maybe Lyme disease is a play? Do you have mold in your home? Like there's a whole list that we have to go down of why we have this. And then I kind of look at, okay, do you have hypermobile joints? Have you ever been diagnosed with like a genetic
What
issue?
is that? Hypermobile joints.
So hypermobile joints is one of the main symptoms of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Basically, you have defective collagen in your body, so all of your joints are hypermobile, which means that they are essentially kind of like double jointed. They pop out of socket really easily. Normal pressure on a normal person, say like you push on your thumb, you try to hold yourself up, that might actually have somebody's wrist like give out on them and like dislocate
Oh,
their shoulder, as opposed to like a normal person who has the ability and the collagen to kind of hold all that in place.
wow. Okay. Um, as I was also preparing, they talked about some other symptoms like the difficulty concentrating, anxiety, depression, which I think you did talk about a little bit about the anxiety. And they said that in the hypovolemic POTS, have you
Yes. Yeah.
that it says it affects about 70% of the people that have POTS.
Yes. Yes. So there's different types of POTS. Some doctors feel like there isn't, and some feel like there are. So that's kind of a debate topic in the community. But the hypovolemic POTS would be low blood volume. And then there's another one called hyperadrenergic POTS, which would be like your, oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. The hyperadrenergic POTS would basically be like your nervous system is firing, or you would have like too much adrenaline in your body, for example. Um, and then a lot of people think there's probably a crossover there as well. Those are the two main types. I believe there's a third one, but I can't quite remember what that one is because most people haven't heard of it, and it's just not,
Well,
it's
I
not,
was just looking here at the list, like there's the neuropathic POTS, which
yes,
is nerve damage.
yes.
Um, and that ends up dealing with like proper blood flow, making the heart work harder to
Mm-hmm.
stabilize blood pressure.
Yes.
It talks about the norepinephrine hormone.
Yes. So neuropathic POTS is one of those things that maybe say you had like a surgery or something and maybe got like a certain nerve damage or something, and then that would cause POTS symptoms, or even in cases of like Lyme disease where you actually have like that nerve damage from the bacteria, which is something that we can't always restore. We can maybe
Yeah.
it, but that would be an example of that.
People who have like Lyme long term, a lot
Hmm.
of times have that permanent damage, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly. Okay, then how about the like autoimmune conditions? It says that they think like autoimmune conditions is a strong potential cause of POTS.
Yeah, so some people can develop POTS from an autoimmune condition where, like, say, for example, your body would attack your nervous system or even your adrenals or your kidneys or something that really controls those stress hormones, your blood pressure. You can develop POTS symptoms from that, absolutely. So that's a big one. Like I said, when we go down the list, we ask them all the things. You get to the, okay, genetic things. Have you been tested for an autoimmune thing? I would really recommend people run a whole panel CBC vitamin deficiencies because low iron can cause symptoms of POTS and not necessarily be true POTS, or it can make your POTS worse if you have POTS. And then check for autoimmune diseases. If we have anything like that going on, check for Lyme disease, and then always get an echo of your heart just to make sure structurally your heart is good.
Yeah, I found it interesting too because it said like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and it says the body mistakes its cells for those of an invader, like you just said, like
Mm-hmm.
a bacteria or virus, and attacks itself. And then it primarily affects women. And then they also said here like it detected chemicals associated with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and
Mm-hmm.
chronic inflammation. So I feel like it sounds like this huge animal that you
Yeah.
have to kind of tame, and like it would be hard to pinpoint it.
Yes. So, and everybody has different reasons why. And then a lot of people have a lot of different comorbidities or like, co-diagnoses that play a role, which makes it more complicated. And that's something that when I went to the doctor, to the cardiologist, and I got the diagnosis, that's something that they did not help me with. They knew what POTS was. They were able to diagnose me, but they weren't able to be like, okay, he actually looked me in the face and he said, this is forever. You cannot fix this. It will not go away. And you have to manage it with salt and water.
You were
And
so devastated, I'm sure.
yeah, and maybe compression gear. And that's all that I got. He never explained that there is a root cause of why we develop POTS. And if you have POTS and you don't know your root cause, doesn't mean you don't have one. It means you haven't figured it out yet. And I am very serious about that. And I know that's a kind of a word we throw around in, like, the more holistic realm a lot. So if people, I know there's like a big divide of people who aren't super into the holistic. But if you hear root cause, it's not just a sham. It's not one of those weird words like detox.
Right.
Like, there is a reason why your body, why your nervous system is malfunctioning to this.
For anything.
Yes.
For anything. So do you find okay, so and I know they say like 14% of POTS patients it can be genetic. Um and it's like 31% have a family member with orthostatic intolerance,
Hmm.
which is feeling dizzy with increased heart rate when standing. I think you dealt with that too, though, didn't you?
Yeah, so mine is very orthostatic on a bad day. For example, I was going to physical therapy for one of my joint issues from Ehlers-Danlos, and I do great there. I love exercise. It helps me a lot at this point in my life. And my mom was in the hospital, so I was very stressed out. That's one of my triggers for my pot symptoms. And getting up and down off the machines, changing position from like sit-ups to like a plank, like I was struggling, and it only lasted a day for me because then my mom was out and I was less stressed out. So it's really interesting how there really are factors that can contribute. But yeah, on a bad day, if you're not hydrated, if you're ill, if you're stressed, the orthostatic, that really, really makes a difference. Yeah.
Just shows you how your body is such a meridian that it all works together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't separate one thing from another. Like it's all the things. Well, it's what we teach in integrative health
Hmm.
practitioners, like the balance of all the things, of the stress, of the water, sunshine, rest. Um, I thought it was interesting too, like they talked about that COVID-19, they said up to 50% with POTS had a previous viral infection.
Yeah.
And then it shows up to 14% of COVID-19 survivors developed POTS. Do you see that in your practice?
I do, yeah, yeah. A lot of people have gotten it after, whether it be the vaccine or the actual illness, which is common. There's a lot of flack about the COVID vaccine, but I mean, any vaccine could trigger
Yeah.
POTS because you're introducing a virus into your body, just like a viral infection can. So that's definitely been a frustrating thing. I've tried to share articles, and Facebook has taken them down.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not a conspiracy. It's we know viruses can trigger POTS, so it's been proven. So that's one of
Yeah,
my.
I don't understand either when you have all these like research papers out there now showing
Yeah.
the results, but yet still well, hopefully it's going to get better here. Okay, so okay, so you have these symptoms. Um, I'm assuming there's some very basic things, no matter what,
Hmm.
you can do, even if you can't pinpoint it as being POTS, that are just lifestyle changes that will improve most things, including POTS.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about what some of those may be?
Yes. So I feel like lifestyle changes for POTS are sometimes better than medicine, while both of them can work together. I do believe some people need that, especially getting started. And I want to preface this by saying lifestyle changes to help manage your POTS. This is not in any way telling you to go do yoga and you will be cured, because that is like a big pet peeve in the POTS community. People say, oh, cut out gluten and you'll be cured, or do yoga and you'll be cured, or you just need to exercise more. And that's not the case, because as we talked about, it's a very complex thing. You could have other things going on. You could have thyroid issues going on, for example, low iron, vitamin deficiencies that are playing a role into your symptoms. So, but overall, the lifestyle changes that can help would be water. First of all, I would say 3 liters of water a day at least is the recommended amount for people with POTS. And
Is
then
that with salt or electrolytes?
so 3 grams of salt is also recommended. So whether you get that through salt tablets, definitely important to balance your electrolytes. Like I know liquid IV is a supplement that's really big in the POTS community. I wouldn't even necessarily drink more than one of those a day per se, because you can, I think the limit is two if you actually read the box. So this is a PSA to be very careful because you
Is
can,
liquid IV a product that you buy somewhere?
yes, it's an electrolyte supplement.
Okay. What
Yeah.
about using like Celtic salt or Baja salt in just in your water or putting it on your tongue and drinking or just in your diet?
So definitely adding salt to your meals, to
Not Morton salt.
you can, yes, you can use Morton salt technically because any salt is going to raise your blood pressure, but there are better salts out there which are better quality. They also have minerals in them. Actually, pink Himalayan salt, for example, is not proven to actually raise blood pressure like white salt is. So I would stay away from
Mm,
pink salt when you're using it specifically to bring your blood pressure up. I'm not saying you can't season stuff with it, but
right.
for a POTS patient, I would definitely stick with like your white salt. Salt tablets are really great. We have those here at the apothecary. That's a really great thing I like to tell people to keep in their emergency bag. You keep some salt tablets, pop one of those babies, drink a whole bottle of water, see how that
When you
does.
start feeling like things are off.
Yes, yes, that. And then I always, people, since it's a blood pressure thing, I feel like we don't talk about it enough, but having a little bit of sugar helps people a lot. If you can get in you a whole bottle of water, a salt tablet, and a little bit of sugar, whether that be a snack, or even a soda, believe it or not. And I don't like to prescribe people soda, but
Right.
sometimes it can help you get
Well,
out of really
if
sugar.
you're if you're like in an emergency situation,
Yeah.
then that out of your choices, that's what you have there, then use it.
Usually anywhere you're at, a soda is the easiest thing I can tell people because there's gas stations. You can grab one with food allergies. A lot of people, although make sure your soda is not caffeinated. That's a big one. You don't want to
Oh. So like Sprite,
want to reach for a Sprite, maybe an orange juice. Try and see kind of
Starry.
what sugar we can kind of quickly get into our bodies. Yeah.
So could you just, I mean, if it was available, just do some honey or some maple syrup, or are you better to go with like sugar?
You could, although I think in an episode to have something kind of heavy like honey or maple syrup, I feel like could make you feel pretty nauseous. So I would
Okay.
go for something maybe a little lighter, less sticky, if that makes
That's
sense.
condensed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I did not know that. And see, I would normally tell people stay away from the Morton salt, but in this case, you're saying you're trying to get the blood pressure up. The
Yeah.
Himalayan salt does not prove
Right.
to do that. You could add Celtic or Baja, which would have all your trace minerals in there, so it would be
Yeah.
good in the sense of healing.
Yeah.
But if worst comes to worst, if you're at a restaurant, grab the white salt and
Mm-hmm. Yep. Salt to a point when you have POTS is a friend, not an enemy, no matter what. And like I said, I recommend, like, put the Celtic salt in your water.
Mhm.
Put it in your cooking, whatever, but keep your regular salt tablets then for emergencies, for your daily use. Some people even like to space them out throughout the day. Like I take one with breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes, and then that kind of keeps you going.
So do you have the salt tablets at the apothecary?
We do, yes. Yep.
And then do they just come in like are they just little tiny tablets? Like or do they taste like a mouthful of Morton salt?
They do if you kind of leave them in your mouth for too long. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
it makes
okay.
blah, and I'll make a face, and my husband Brandon will be like, "You just took a salt tablet." I'm like, "Huh?" Because
Hmm.
but you kind of learn to love that taste in a weird way, because you're about to feel better, which is so weird. It's such a weird disease, honestly, when you really think about it. Um,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
we do the water, we keep the salt tablets handy, we keep a little sugar handy if needed. What else do you recommend?
so compression gear is one of the things that's recommended, and we do have that here at the apothecary. Our girl Morgan here, she actually can custom fit you, which is really nice because when I tell you I bought a pair of compression leggings years ago, and it took me 30 minutes to put them on my body because they were so tight. I had to lay down and hoist these things on. And if I was properly fitted, I probably would not have had to deal with that. Because by the time I got them on, I think my heart rate was higher than it would have been if I did not wear them.
Yeah.
But
So
yes,
for
com-
someone who doesn't know what happens in the body when you use that product or that type of product, what is that doing? Compression.
yeah. So basically, what it does is it squeezes your legs to the point where, like, it's squeezing your blood vessels and it's pushing your blood back up to your head, which with POTS is what we have the problem with. So if you get blood pooling in your legs, a time where your feet are turning completely red or purple because your blood is pooling so hard. That's a really good time for the compression gear. A lot of people do socks, but I personally don't really like the socks. And I believe there is studies that kind of prove that a waist compression and thigh high compression is actually more effective than just like the feet, because you're actually compressing what is pushing blood back up to your heart, back up to your head. Than with like a waist compression. Some people swear by like normal things like Spanx.
Oh,
Their clothes because it is technically compression gear. Now, if you go to like a sports store and you buy like, say, for example, compression shorts, that's not going to be enough compression to do anything. Spanks are a little bit more than that, especially if you get them a size too small. But definitely recommend coming in here to the apothecary, getting your fitting. We have compression leggings. We even have like maternity compression leggings, which sometimes are really nice for people that like bloat. They're not as tight around the middle, so you're a little bit more comfortable. And then thigh high compression socks and stuff like that. And on the note of compression, one of the reasons why exercise helps so much with POTS is, especially when we strengthen our legs, thighs, and butt, it actually, your muscles act as that natural compression to squeeze your blood vessels, and get that blood back up to where it's supposed to be. So that's why muscle kind of tone in your legs is so important for POTS also.
so is there a recommendation for like the amount of exercise you should be getting with POTS?
So there's something called the CHOP protocol, which is a nice place for people to start. I recommend
How do you
honestly
spell that?
CHOP, CHOP.
Chop. Okay.
Yep, that is a nice place for people to start. Also, I'd recommend honestly going to a physical therapist who's knowledgeable in POTS, starting there, because some people have such exercise intolerance that the idea of exercise is laughable to them. So they really need a lot of extra help in that area. And I personally found once I started physical therapy and exercise, especially in my legs, I no longer needed to wear compression gear. That's how effective it was. So I'm telling you from personal experience. And there was a time where I couldn't exercise and now I can. So definitely it is possible. But also with that, I would say for example, back to Lyme or something, if you have developed POTS because of Lyme disease or something, maybe getting that a little bit under control first is going to have you or give you a better tolerance to exercise. So say we're having Hashimoto's or something, getting that under control is going to give us more tolerance to exercise. Getting our iron deficiency under control is going to give you more tolerance. Any underlying thing that we can balance out in the body is going to give you more tolerance towards being able to exercise, which is going to keep you from getting deconditioned, and it's going to improve your vagal tone, which is also very important. So there's a lot of reasons why exercise is important, and I'm not talking be a marathon runner. I'm talking therapeutic exercise to keep yourself going.
So we talked about water and salt and a little bit of sugar and exercise. Diet food choices. Is there a certain, like some people like the map or, like, is there a certain like plan that you would recommend if people aren't sure that maybe they would follow this specific list of foods?
Yeah, so there's a couple different routes that we go. I like to have people keep a food and symptom diary where they just track what they ate, what time, what symptoms, what time, what they were doing. That way we can look for triggers like, okay, every time I say I eat tomatoes, I get really ill. We kind of look into why that's higher in histamine. So for some people, we recommend going gluten and dairy free because they might have a sensitivity or that might just help decrease inflammation in their body for the time being. Other people, we recommend a low histamine diet because they might have those mast cell issues or just their toxic load is so full. Like we learned in our school with the bucket, the toxic load,
Mhm.
you have all these things going on, Lyme, mold, whatever, glyphosate, whatever other things it is, even it could be other things. The possibilities are endless that fill our toxic load. And then we say eat something really high in histamine like a tomato or chocolate, then that bucket spills over and we get symptoms. But if we kind of work on getting that down, not putting as much histamine in our diet, whether it be permanently or just for a little bit while we work on those issues, that can help minimize symptoms, minimize that toxic load. because your body can only handle so much. So there might be a point in time where, oh, hey, I can't do these things or I can't eat these things, but eventually I will be able to, because we'll have all of these issues under control more to where your body can handle it. A lot of people with POTS are just like very hypersensitive to a lot of things. So those are a couple of like, say, like the diets that I would recommend
Hmm.
people try. But the kind of basics is you don't want to eat a heavily carb meal, like say go to Olive Garden and get the endless pasta, breadsticks, because what that's going to do is it's going to expand in your stomach. Your blood is going to go from your head to your belly into your digestive tract to try and digest those things, which is going to cause you more symptoms. And that's one of the things that I find that actually gets me a good bit, because sometimes you think, oh, I'm having a good day, this is yummy, I ate two
I
giant
can
pieces,
do it today. I can do it. Yeah.
and then you're going on a walk later and you're like, oh, why am I breathing so heavy, why do I feel like I can't do this? And it's like, oh yes, because all of my blood is in my belly right now digesting my food. So that's one of the things. Staying hydrated, obviously. And sometimes caffeine, taking caffeine out, or even sometimes some people supplement with just a smidge of caffeine, like a half calf tea or coffee can help bring a blood pressure up. I also tell people to cut out all artificial everything. So artificial flavors, preservatives, additives, sugars, all of that. Because if most people who do have POTS have a higher toxic load, your body then cannot process that. Because a lot of people think, I've been eating this stuff forever. Everybody eats it. What's the problem? And it's just at this point in time, your body is so overloaded that it can no longer process these man made chemicals. So I recommend taking that out and eating whole foods. So if you're just trying to look for like diet changes to help you, like I said, keep the diary, do the water, do the salt, try compression, try to find a knowledgeable physical therapist or start the CHOP protocol, something like that, and eat whole foods. So a whole food is something that has come from an animal or the ground. It's grown like a fruit, a veggie, rice, potato, meat. Whole foods only cut out all artificial everything. And if you want to take the extra step, you could go organic to try and avoid the glyphosate and such.
Mm-hmm. And then, great tips. Then what about sleep?
So sleep is very important and very complicated. So most people with POTS need actually like 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night to function well. So I would say if you're someone with POTS that is still able to work full time, making that a priority to rest. And there is such a thing when it comes to POTS as like overdoing it. So definitely, if you feel like you're cleaning your house or you're doing yard work or you're doing something that is overdoing it for you, and you start to feel that, you have to take that into consideration. Say, okay, what am I not going to do tonight so that I can get extra rest in my body, calm my nervous system down, sleep well. I recommend for sleeping definitely magnesium, especially magnesium glycinate. We have that here as well. You can pick up. Um, it's just really good for your heart, for your nervous system, that form specifically. And it can help you sleep. It can help with like muscle stiffness and stuff as well. I really suggest that before bed rather than melatonin, because you can kind of build your tolerance to melatonin, which can sometimes get tricky and make sleeping harder in the future. So magnesium before bed, just good sleep hygiene, turning off the screens, trying to wind down, maybe doing some stretching if you're one of those people who have trouble sleeping. Just things that can help you sleep are definitely the best thing that you can do. Anything that relaxes you before bed is good. But yeah, getting adequate sleep is important. But for like you said, the one client that you have who wakes up in the morning and they have like heart palpitate or their heart's beating, they're kind of like anxious. So that's usually a cortisol response.
Hmm.
And that's one of the ways you can measure cortisol actually is with a saliva test first thing in the morning. So that makes sense. And that's most likely because your nervous system and your adrenals and everything are firing when they're not supposed to. And so your body is always just kind of wired. And so as soon as you wake up, you're right back in that stress response. So calming down your nervous system, your stress response, that has a lot to do with it. And that's kind of where like the vagus nerve comes into play with a lot of that stuff, because it really determines everything, how you sleep, eat, feel like. So getting good vagal tone, vagal exercises, that is really important to kind of manage how your nervous system fires.
Interesting. And then obviously reducing stress for everybody. I mean, these tips are actually good for everybody
They are, yeah.
in general. So, if you're having issues and you're not sure, just go ahead and implement these things because they're going to be good regardless. Um, I don't think people realize how powerful stress is. And I feel like in this country, especially, we tend to we don't even realize that we're in fight and flight all the time
Hmm.
and how damaging that is to our body and literally taking years off your life.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrible, and people with POTS have it 10 times worse. If you can imagine your nervous system just kicking on just inappropriately is the best word I can think of, out of nowhere. That's why a lot of people unfortunately get kind of looked past and diagnosed with anxiety when it's POTS, because the symptoms overlap. Because in a panic attack, you are kicking off adrenaline, you are kicking off cortisol, and that's usually something that you're thinking about that's like physically panicking you,
Mhm.
worrying you. But when it comes to POTS, you could be sitting, socializing with your friends, laying in bed. I mean, doing literally nothing, and your body will just kick up adrenaline. Just boom, we're gonna have an adrenaline dump right
Yeah,
here,
that's how she
right.
describes it. She says, when I wake up, she goes, I feel my heart, and then it rushes up in my head, and then it just goes through my entire body.
Yes. And so that's the difference. Some of them look like anxiety and POTS can look the same in that sense because there's similar chemicals that are being kind of released in the body, but they're not the same because anxiety is mental, which is triggering a physical reaction, whereas POTS is physically your body is having a physical reaction regardless to what you are thinking about. So it has nothing to do with the mental. Although when you have an episode like that, I'm sure it can be very scary, which a lot of
Yeah.
people say I do have anxiety about my symptoms, but my anxiety is not causing my symptoms. And that's a big kind of line that I think a lot of people need to understand when it comes to POTS.
Yeah, I guess that would give you a little bit, if you had understanding of that even as horrific as it is to go through, at least you can be like, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. I feel
Yes.
like when you can understand what's happening, you can feel um, calmer about it.
Yes.
One of the other things I read too about was the body posture and how important that is.
Yeah, so in some people, especially like in the neck, like the cervical region of your neck, you can actually have not only like compressed blood vessels, but depending on how you hold your neck, it actually gives your body that orthostatic kind of response of like changing your posture. So that's really interesting. Definitely one of the things, I wouldn't say it so much has to do with like your shoulders rounding forward or anything, but there is definitely some evidence that like even like chiropractic manipulations can help with like some blood flow in certain areas, and that can help with your POTS symptoms as well.
So the paying attention to the posture is like more about making sure that things are flowing properly.
That, and also if you get into like posture wise, like thinking about what you're doing, I kind of take posture in this sense with POTS as like your whole body, what your whole body's doing movement wise. So are we standing up super quickly after sitting for like 3+ hours? Are we bending over a lot, which is going to trigger symptoms? Like, are we maybe outside picking up sticks to mow the grass or weeding and we're bending constantly up and down, up and down, up and down? And then the one time you stand up after that and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not feel right. Um, are we, say, laying in bed all night sleeping and then just alarm goes off and boom, we jumping right out of bed? Do we feel horrible? A lot of it's very common whenever you get up to pee in the middle of the night, to just be really dizzy. And that's because you were completely limp in bed laying for hours. And then you just all of a sudden stood up, which we know people with POTS bodies can't do very well. Because at that point, basically what it is like your nervous system isn't responding to that muscle and tension that your blood vessels need to constrict in order to push that blood back up to your head. So when we stand, our nervous system naturally constricts our blood vessels, constricts some muscles in order to push that blood back up to our head so we can change posture, stand up, lay down, do burpees, for example, no matter what, and be able to maintain homeostasis with our blood pressure and everything. But people with POTS, their nervous system isn't doing that. So when you stand up, all your blood is going whoosh down to your feet, and you're not able to compensate for that.
That's really interesting. I guess this is a curious question, might be kind of off the wall. Does it look different for someone, say, perimenopause, postmenopause? Can perimenopause trigger this
Anything
whole stuff?
hormonally can trigger POTS, yes. A lot of people don't do well on estrogen birth controls who have POTS, which is really interesting because it kind of affects mostly the thyroid, which affects all of your hormonal systems, which are very important. I'm not sure exactly what hormones in particular, like I said, other than I know estrogen can be a bit of a trigger for people. Um, but yes, anything hormonally can trigger POTS symptoms, especially imbalances, which is interesting. Generally, we don't see it in. I, that's not necessarily true. You can see it in like very old people, I would say, more than like a middle-aged perimenopause type of woman. Because the older people have more issues, they might be deconditioned, they might have something going on with their heart or with their nervous system, like wear and tear on their body through the years. And then we have like the young adults who they get it during puberty and may or may not grow out of it depending on the type. So those are the
So,
people.
so then, for the most part, you would see it in the younger female would be the most. I mean,
Yes,
guys get it, but mainly younger, 15, 25, it would show up.
yes,
It would be more unlikely to show up in someone as they got older.
yes,
Or
unless you had a significant event that triggered it, like autoimmune development, like a
COVID vaccine,
yeah,
COVID itself,
right, a virus,
Epstein Barr.
something like that that triggered it, that caused damage or a malfunction, miscommunication in their nervous system. Yeah.
Okay, and then I also read that it was important to maintain a consistent body temperature. Can you
Yes.
give any insight to that?
Yes, temperature is probably one of the most important things. So if we get too cold or too hot, it can trigger symptoms. Usually, being too hot triggers more than cold, in my experience, and other people that I've heard of, because basically, when you get warm or hot, your blood vessels dilate. So we talk about them constricting to push the blood back up to your head. So when you get too hot, they dilate, and all your blood kind of pools down away from your head, away from your heart, and that's where you can get really shaky, have the tachycardia. Some people will pass out, and even get really nauseous. And really, the thing that for me I feel the most, other than like the heart rate and the shakiness, is you just get this really gross feeling in your head, and it's really hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. But it's literally the blood leaving your head, and it
Oh.
feels awful. If that makes sense.
Does
Um,
it feel like a rush or
It
just,
can, yes, you can feel the rush and actually feel your or hear it go. And
oh,
that whenever you stand up too quickly, especially, you can actually hear that in your ears of your blood literally leaving your head, which is,
wow. So that would be a good telltale.
yeah. And not everybody experiences that. I personally do. I think most people probably do at some point, and it's normal for even a person without POTS to get a head rush
Yeah.
occasionally. So that's something that just happens more frequently, that I think just hyper aware of now, because you kind of know what it means for you if you have
Yeah.
POTS. But yeah, when we get hot, our blood vessels dilate, our blood pools. You'll generally see like me outside gardening. I love to garden, and I'll be outside in the warmth, loving the sun because the sun makes me feel better. I love the vitamin D, the endorphins, it's fantastic, but the heat, not so much. So I will actually look down at my feet, and if my veins are huge and my feet are red and my toes are blood red, that's usually when I know I need to go inside. I need to put my feet up. I need to cool down, because we don't want it to get worse.
So what I'm hearing throughout this whole thing is mainly like you're trying to control the flow of blood and make sure that it stays consistent throughout the entire body. Like it likes to rush into the legs and feet, and you're trying to keep it more towards the heart and the brain. Um,
Yes.
Interesting. So I'm guessing as much as I love my infrared and the sauna, I'm guessing that for a POTS person, the infrared sauna is not good.
No, I would not recommend saunas for POTS patients. Now, if you could get the infrared light without the sauna part, that could be great for inflammation and things. But I would not recommend the heat unless you can turn it to a level that you can stand. Because
Okay. Like
everybody has a
control the
different,
temperature.
yes, everybody has a different tolerance. And a lot of people with POTS, even because of the nervous system issues, they don't sweat correctly. They might either sweat too much or not enough, so then their body can't actually cool off like
It
it's,
doesn't regulate.
yeah, can't regulate your temperature. That's one of the symptoms as well. So that is a big one. So showers are a really big trigger for people with POTS. A lot of people like they takes all that they have in them to get in the shower. I'll never forget the one day I had my friend over at my house, and I said, "Oh, I'll be ready in a minute. Let me hop in the shower for 5 minutes and just wet my hair down because it was crazy." And I came out, put on my clothes, and she was like, looked at my feet. She's like, "Why are your feet that color?" And I was like, "Oh," and that's kind of where I had this like light bulb. I was like, "This isn't normal." I just thought that people, like everybody's feet were like tomato red, and
Oh,
were bulging when they got out of the shower. And sometimes it's truly painful, like your veins being that full, it hurts.
yeah.
So showers are a big trigger for people. So people who have POTS, I highly recommend keeping your shower not lukewarm, because who wants to take a lukewarm shower unless you truly cannot stand anything else, but just not having it super hot to where you can't tolerate it. A shower chair is a game changer. For me personally, I have a what is it called, the shower head that detaches.
Yeah.
I can,
Sprayer.
yes, and I don't use the shower chair because that's one more thing I have to clean when I clean my house, and I just see it as a hassle. So I personally, if I'm having a bad day, if I'm tired, if I just want to relax, I'll just pop a squat in my tub and use the shower head. And now
Okay.
I'm an able-bodied woman, so I can like safely get up out of there by myself, and maybe not everybody would be able to do that,
Yeah.
but that's just really easy. It's a really easy thing. You just sit when you take a shower.
This has been so informative. Like I literally like have learned so much today from you.
Oh,
So
good.
is there any, and I'm sure the audience has too, or will. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you feel is important that we cover?
I don't know. I mean, I can talk about POTS for 10 years. I feel like
Right?
I've learned a lot. I just think it's important to remember that you can get better. And even if you have POTS symptoms sometimes, like for me personally, I don't really have POTS symptoms unless I am overheated, incredibly stressed out, or I ate something that doesn't agree, or I'm ill, like with a flu or
Yeah,
something.
you've learned to control it through lifestyle changes.
Yes. So unless there's some kind of other trigger that is out of your control, like those things, you can manage it and you can control it. You have to make the lifestyle changes. You have to find the root cause. You have to address your your nutritional deficiencies. Got to
Toxin
drink.
overload.
Yes, toxic load. All of that stuff is important. And like you said, it's complex. You have to figure out what's causing what.
Yeah.
So
Well, I kind of consider you the expert in this field because you have lived it and you literally have figured it out basically by yourself
yeah.
and just gained so much education from going through that journey. And I think too, like for someone who has anything, going to someone who has been there. Like
Yes.
I hate when you go to a doctor and they're like, yeah, they've never experienced it, so they don't have the empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if someone's like, wow, this sounds like me, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to go talk to her, how do they get a hold of you?
So you can get a hold of me here at the Chambers Apothecary. Give me a call. Give us a call. Just ask for Catherine, and then we can get you in for a health coaching session and see what we can do. Because, like I said, when you come here, it's kind of a one-stop shop. We can get you your salt tablets fitted for compression gear, and some supplements and stuff like that to address deficiencies. We can order additional testing, all of that stuff. And then we also, obviously, we love Well with Ray. So if you have Lyme disease or mold illness or something like that, where you need a doctor to address things, we can, send you to her, pass your information along, let her know kind of the background, the story here, and work with you as well. So definitely lots of options for people that have POTS. And I love when you come to me and no symptom is too weird to talk to me about. I always tell people that.
Well, that's the difference between going to someone who's a holistic practitioner and then the allopathic. You know, we do care about what the root cause is.
Yeah,
We want to figure because you're not going to get balanced in your body because we're only allowed to use certain words.
right.
You're not going to find balance in your body until you find out what's causing the imbalance in the body. And so we see the body as a whole functioning organ or system, and you do have to go in and figure out what the root is of what's happening and start addressing those things so that you can live a normal life, hopefully. So I appreciate you joining me today on the Just Chrissy podcast. It's been very informative. And if anybody is experiencing these symptoms and want to get a hold of Katherine, she's very knowledgeable and she would be happy to help you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming.